you only have a certain amount of time to make as much money as you can. And at his age, where he's at in his career, you just can't leave money on the table. And I'm sure that's what the major factor was. But I get it from the Clippers, too.
Welcome into Clippers Talk, another edition this week. If you missed our show on Monday, we had the Clipcast guys on. Now join the show as a good friend and a baller straight out of Simi Valley who became the leading scorer in the history of Bruins basketball before heading to the league for almost a decade, where he took home the Most Improved Player award in just his second season as a Bullet. And he's number one with a bullet as a Clippers analyst on Bally Sports. It's the flying squirrel, the snake killer himself, Don MacLean, joining me here on Clippers Talk. Don, how we doing?
Doing great. Getting ready to crank it up. I hate this time of year where you enjoy the off season for a while, but then when it gets this close, you're kind of ready to get it cranking.
A little calm before the storm here. Before we get to the Clippers stuff, I want to talk a little bit about you, your career. And just, one of the reasons you're so beloved, and I saw it in all the tweets I got earlier today when I said you were coming on, is because you're not afraid to tell the truth. As Petros would always say, the next ass you kiss will be the first.
Right.
It ain't happening. So we know when you say something, it has a little bit more weight to it because you're not just handing out compliments all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You truly believe what you say, and that's kind of a rare thing in today's media where you see people looking for angles to gain popularity. You just speak from the heart in kind of an unapologetic and just honest way. Where did that come from?
Well, I think going back to when I played, Adam, I was always realistic with myself. You know what I do in the spring with CAA and running their NBA pre-draft, and we talk about that a lot, being realistic. You don't grow unless you're realistic with yourself. And I think part of the reason a skinny 6'10" white kid from Simi Valley made it to the NBA was I was always realistic of where I was at and what I needed to get better at and what I needed to do to get as far as I wanted to go. And I think I've just kind of always been that way. And I decided when my first job in the media was I did UCLA radio with Chris Roberts right after I retired. And I started thinking about, what's kind of going to be my style. And you know me well enough, Adam. It's kind of my personality, too. I'm not the most friendly, social guy to begin with. But I just felt like my understanding of the game, even back then, this was 2002, I think I started 2003. I just felt like I wanted my understanding of the game to come through. And whether it was positive or negative, and I've gotten better along the way of spinning the negative and saying it away that it's not just coming down on guys or coming down on teams, or saying it in a way where it's more like constructive. Like I would like to see him do it this way instead of, well, that play sucked or whatever people say. And so it goes back to when I started playing. I think it's partly my personality, but I also think I want people that are watching me, whether it's on Clippers Live or doing a college game or whatever I'm doing, to learn something. And a lot of the times, if you're saying what you see, it's more constructive and more interesting than just saying, oh, what a great shot by so-and-so. And so my style has kind of developed over the years, but it began with, and you're exactly right, being honest, calling them like I see them, and it's kind of grown from there.
We love the deadpan, no nonsense approach. I got some tweets about that earlier today. Everybody excited for you to come on the show because they know what you bring. I want to ask you about your basketball principles and just philosophies of what works and what wins in the league, and how you came to those basketball convictions over time through your playing career and now being an analyst.
Well, the game has really evolved, as you know, Adam. It's a lot different than when I played, and that's why if you watch me enough, I rarely go to the when I played because I don't need to talk about myself, number one, but number two, a lot's changed and it's evolved in a big way. It used to be a lot of half court isolations on the post, and then play out of that. The rules have dictated all this change. When they started allowing people to zone, that really changed the game for the better. It's faster, it's more spaced, it's more open. And so it's not as bogged down as it was when I played. And, when people go to the when I played, it was more physical, it was tougher to score. which it may or may not have been, but I don't think it was a better game back then. It may have been more fiercely contested, I guess is the best way to put it. But they had to get what ended up happening was all that physicality, all that half court, all that man-to-man stuff led to fights, and they had to get rid of that. And they did. Adam Silver and David Stern and all those guys did a great job of elevating the game kind of past that to where it is now. And again, I go back to what I do in the spring, and I get these guys, high-level guys. We had 3 first-rounders last year. We have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys every year, and it's about understanding the NBA game. And if you can't shoot, you can't play in the league, and it's gotten to that. There's rare exceptions of guys that can be big contributors that really can't shoot, but it's pretty much across the board except for centers. You have to be able to shoot. And so, that's what you start with that. And that's why spacing becomes so important. That's why ball movement becomes so important, so that you get the defense to rotate, you get them into rotation, and hopefully you got guys that can make open shots. But the game where it is now is about scoring, it's about opening the floor, and it's about making shots.
What are some of the things you do? I know you work at Proactive Sports Performance Lab, and you've worked with some of the best. You just mentioned the first rounders and Donovan Mitchell over the years. We'll get to Paul George in a bit, Karl Anthony Towns. If you're telling a young guy that is on his way, and maybe he's a fringe NBA player, just wants to improve his game, whoever it may be, what's the type of stuff you can work on to get better today? Or what are some of those traits you look for in a young player?
Well, everything starts with shooting, Adam. And here's the thing. There's a lot of guys that get up shots, right? Even going to high school guys, college guys, I get up shots. I get up 500 shots a day. But can you get to a place where you trust that shot? And what I spend a lot of time with, because we do a lot of live stuff, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 5-on-5, is you have to be able to trust your shot, because if you don't, they short close on you. They don't close out at all. And then you have nothing. And so if you trust your shot to where you have enough space to shoot it and make it, you're not going to make them all, but that you are willing to shoot it, that opens up everything else. Because a hard close, now you can rip and get by them. You can move and cut. But it all starts, especially in today's game, with being able to make shots and trusting your shot enough that no matter the time and score, no matter what part of the game it is, if it gets swung to you, that you are willing to take that shot.
You're listening to Clippers Talk. I'm Adam Moslem. We got the great Don MacLean joining us here today. Don, you mentioned how much the game has evolved and how much it has changed. And I'm wondering, because, you had a hell of a shot. I was looking at your stats earlier. You didn't take a lot of threes. How much would that change if you came into the league today, and how your game would translate?
Well, it changed a while ago, Adam. So I would have spent – I think I shot 33s my entire career at UCLA. It wasn't really my role, but my game was always inside the line, in the mid-post, off the bounce, catch and shoot 17 to 19. That was always my game. But what would have happened if I had played 10 years later, 15 years later, 20 years later, whatever it is, I'm assuming in high school, all that catch and shoot stuff inside the line would have been pushed outside the line. And then it would have gone to college, would have been the same thing. And remember, the college line only changed, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, where it was the same as the high school line. And now it's a little farther out. So that being said, I think by the time I got to the NBA and where the game is at now, all those shots I had inside the line would have been outside the line.
I mentioned in the intro, but how did you go from first year scoring 6 points per game in the league as a member of the Washington Bullets to then going to 18, 3 times that amount? Was it just minutes and opportunity, or did something slow down for you?
Well, I think what's interesting about that, Adam, is even though I didn't play a lot, 6 points a game, I got enough opportunity that I kind of figured out what I needed to do and what I needed to, or who I was going to become, actually, as a player. I had guys playing in front of me that weren't really Purvis Ellison, Harvey Grant, some other guys, but I got enough opportunities. Like, we weren't good. I think we won 22 games my rookie year, something like that, 24. But I had a lot of fourth quarters where I played the whole fourth quarter because we were getting blown out or whatever. And it gave me enough opportunity to not only figure out some stuff, but get a little bit of confidence. Like, I I forget. I've never looked again, but I had like some monster fourth quarters, like 18 points in 12 minutes kind of thing. And so it gave me some confidence. And so when I went into the off season, I needed to get stronger. I needed to get better condition. And I just came in and took minutes. They had drafted Calbert Chaney right over the top of me. And I came in and just took the job and was ready. But it was a combination of both those things, getting enough opportunity to understand what I needed to do, but also enough opportunity to get some confidence going into the next year.
How strange is it for you to see, and it just started this year in football already, but to see the Big Ten patch on a UCLA uniform, considering all that you did back in the Pac-10, I believe it was still in the early 90s.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, Adam, in yes, part of of that is when I played, but I've been doing Pac-12 Network since the inception 12 years ago, and so getting to know all the universities and the people and the SIDs and all the people around the Pac-12 as I did over the years, it's just it's disappointing for a lot of people, myself included. But it's a new day. I'm going to do some work for the Big Ten Network this upcoming season as well. And so I'm looking forward to it. It took me a while to kind of get over that the Pac-12 went away. It's not all the way away yet. Oregon State, Washington State are still keeping it alive. But SC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington going to the Big Ten. But I'm kind of excited to get to know a new conference and get to know new coaches and get to know new universities, like I did when I started. Because when I finished UCLA, I was gone playing, and then when I came back, all I knew was UCLA. And when Pac-12 started, Pac-12 Network, I got to go on the road and go to all these different schools and get to understand those not only schools and universities, but communities and all the people around it.
D-Mac, I know you did a lot of prep work with Paul George. You have a relationship with him going back to the draft and getting him ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe you were surprised that he left, as many people weren't. There have been some comments with him on Podcast P calling the Clippers the B team. Some people don't like that. But in just looking at the situation with the Clippers, should anyone have hard feelings really in this scenario, or could it be both good for both I guess the player leaving and the team moving on maybe?
Well, it's unfortunate because I think a lot of people love Paul George in the city and didn't want to see him leave. I'm sure the Clippers didn't want to see him leave, but and I didn't talk to him before he made the decision. I haven't talked to him since. But what people need to understand is this. This isn't like a regular job where you can work till you're 65. You have a short window. That window's getting bigger now with all nutrition and sports performance and recovery, so guys are extending their careers. But even still, you only have a certain amount of time to make as much money as you can. And at his age, where he's at in his career, you just can't leave money on the table. And I'm sure that's what the major factor was. But I get it from the Clippers too. That second apron, and I'm sure you've talked about it on this show, is no joke. You can't be in it because it just limits what you can do. And if you're a championship level team, you hope things don't go wrong, injuries or whatever, but they do. And if you can't fix that, if you're a contending team, then you're done. And so I get it from both sides. I get it from the Clippers side, why they kind of held to where they held, but I also get it from PG's side that, look, where he's at, it's a whole lot of money that he would have been leaving on the table to come back. And so he did what he had to do.
You mentioned that dreaded second apron. It's like for a team that already doesn't have many first-round picks, to get them back and then to have them frozen or at the back of the line, 30th, that would just be insane. So it's even worse for them. What do you think of the fit with Paul George next to Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid in Philly?
Well, I think Paul has always been good at, he was kind of the main guy in Indiana at the end and then in OKC, but I felt like he did a great job in LA. Look, I'm sure you've covered this as well. The injuries, why they didn't get to where they needed to go seemingly every year in the playoffs. Something went wrong injury-wise. But Paul always did a great job of understanding what the team needed based on who was playing and then kind of morphing into that player. Like, it's not hard to insert. I mean, it's not easy to insert James Harden into a team mid-season. But not only was that a great job by James Harden, but also PG and Kawhi. allowing that and that manifesting itself. It took a few games, but I guess where I'm going with this is I think PG will, once they get to training camp in Philadelphia, will understand what's needed from him and do what's necessary around Maxey, around Embiid, and all the other guys they have.
When they went on that run and were 26-5 over a 31-game stretch last season, is that the best Clippers basketball that you had done analyst work for? Is that the best they've ever looked?
Yes, yeah, no doubt. And not only that, I was saying, I didn't really say it on the show, but I would say it like on Petros' show and Matt's show, that I thought they were going to win the whole thing during that stretch. I thought they had every box checked. Harden was doing exactly what you needed him to do. PG, everyone was doing exactly what you needed them to do to win. And I kept looking ahead to the playoffs. And you think about, okay, what is this going to look like in the playoffs? They could have played it any style. They matched up with any team in the West or the East. They had, like I said, they had every box checked. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out. But yeah, that was the best stretch. I've been doing Clippers for a long time, and that run was the best Clipper team and the best run I've seen for sure.
It feels like a sports tragedy type thing when you talk about what if scenarios and what could have been. You touch upon it a little bit. Obviously, the injuries are at the forefront of everyone's mind when they talk about the 2-1-3 era and them not being successful, at least getting to the top of the mountain. Is there anything else that stands out to you for why this team could never totally click in, or is it just as simple as Kawhi's hurt? I mean, you're not going to reach the top without your best player.
No, it especially when it's built the way it is. I mean, the NBA now is built around superstar players, and so you have two of them or three of them. You need them to win and win big. Well, I'm not talking about regular season wins. I'm talking about winning playoff series and eventually winning the whole thing. And so if you built the team around two guys for a while and then you added Harden, now it's three guys. And I'm sitting here saying still today, I think if everyone had stayed healthy, they would have won the championship. You take one out and it just doesn't work. That's just the way it is in winning at the highest level. Again, you can win games all day long in the regular season without one of them or even two of them. But when you get to the playoffs, it's a whole different thing.
So they'll be starting the season with a guy out with Paul George now in Philadelphia, and it's back to a two-man type of game. But how do you think they're going to work James Harden and Kawhi Leonard? We saw they were successful, but now it's a 1-2 punch. Is it possible? I have not bought into anybody who has said, hey, addition by subtraction, you're losing Paul George, you're getting better. I don't believe any of that stuff. But is there any way those two complement each other better in some way as James Harden and Kawhi?
Well, I don't buy into that either, Adam. But here's what I think heading into this season. So we spent all year last year talking about Harden and the blueprint of the Clippers to be successful. And that was, for the most part, Harden 10-plus assists, PG and Kawhi 20 to 25 plus. That was the formula. That was the blueprint. And during that 26-5 run, it was like that most nights. So now what needs to happen is Harden's got to change. He still, I'm sure, will have a goal of getting 10-plus assists, but he has to change his approach. He's got to be more aggressive to score on his own, to take up some of that slack of PG. But also thinking, look, PG is one of the best two-way players in the game and has been for a long time. But I feel like what they added defensively, I think they're going to be better defensively. I really do. Adding Batum back in, Derrick Jones Jr. has proven he can guard guys, especially in the playoffs. Chris Dunn's a very good on-ball defender. Bamba's a rim protector. So I feel like overall they're going to be better defensively, which could make up for maybe some lack of production without PG being there. But I'm really fascinated to see when the season starts how Harden looks different in his approach. Is he going to look to score more? Is he going to be is he going to kind of be in between what he was last year versus his Houston Rocket days? Because to me, I think that's going to have to be the sweet spot where he's not 35 a night, but he's like 25 a night and still trying to play make and get those assists.
He only put up, it kind of shocked me when I looked at it during the offseason. He was only taking 11 shots per game when he got to the Clippers. And there were times where they were encouraging him to shoot more. You have a green light. Don't be worried about stepping on anyone's toes. he can go from 11 to what's the number for him to really up the scoring to make up for the loss of Paul George?
Well, let's see if other guys step up too. That's the other part we don't know. But knowing what I know now, not knowing what Derrick Jones is going to look like, or Batum, or any of these guys they're trying to fit in, what Terance Mann looks like, does he make another jump this year? I would say 20 is probably the number. 17 to 20 FGAs is probably the number. And then hopefully as it goes along, other guys get comfortable within the system. Other guys, maybe teams start adjusting and really loading to Kawhi and Harden. So that opens up other guys, and maybe they get more opportunities. But I do think it's going to have to start with Kawhi being himself, Harden being more aggressive, looking to score more, and then let's see what it does to the rest of the team.
Of course, the question isn't whether or not Kawhi can get to that level. It's just whether or not he's going to be on the court and be available for the team. 4 straight season, unfortunately, he hasn't been able to finish the year or start a playoff run or finish a playoff run. Don, you went through knee injuries. You went through some injury issues in your career. I think there's this narrative out there that guys don't want to play now, and I don't believe that, and I certainly don't believe that with Kawhi Leonard. And just speaking from experience, just how frustrating can that be, being those setbacks with knee injuries?
Well, look, Kawhi Leonard's won championships, so nobody can say he doesn't want to play. What's changed is, and again, I hate going back to when I played, but part of the reason I had knee problems was overuse. And so that game has changed tremendously in terms of recovery, sports performance, off-season workouts, in-season workouts, and managing. It used to be enhancing like your speed, your quickness, your strength. It was more about getting better. Now off-season work is more about injury prevention and trying to get stronger in areas so you don't break down during a long season. And so from that standpoint, it's a lot better for the players. And so I'm glad no one's saying the LM term anymore. It's more just like he's rest or whatever they call it. But they've gotten smarter with that. And I just hope that Kawhi, with that being said, and having a good offseason, I think Clipper fans should be happy. He probably didn't play in the Olympics, even though it sounds like he probably wanted to. But being healthy heading into the season, that he does hold up and that he is able to play not a lot of games in the regular season, but also be healthy for the playoffs.
Do you think, and they've tried everything at this point, do you think Coach Lou had been joked about going back to load management after they lost that series to Dallas? Yeah. But is there a possibility they have 16 back-to-backs that we just don't see Kawhi on one end of the front end or the back end of back-to-backs this season?
I would assume so, because that's kind of what it's been before. The interesting part, though, is you had 3 superstar players before. Now you only have 2. And so, the West is loaded. We know that. And I think it will be dictated by, maybe not early in the season, but late in the season. I think the standings may dictate some of that. But again, it doesn't matter where the Clippers are in the standings if he's not healthy for the playoffs. So if he doesn't play in any back-to-backs because they feel that's what's necessary for him to be ready for the playoffs, then that's what they should do.
You talked about how this team is kind of regrouped with losing Paul George, and it feels like, Don, for the first time to me at least, they are truly building an identity on the defensive end, where they came into training camp last year and they said, hey, the goal is to be top 5. Well, they finished 17th defensively, and it was worse than that throughout a lot of the season. Do you think being that good defensively raises your floor during a regular season, where if you have that effort on that end, shots come and go, but if you bring that effort defensively, that could be huge for them?
No doubt. And I think if you establish that culture in training camp right off the bat, that look, this is how we're doing it, and this isn't going to change, and our lineups may change, guys may be in and out, we may have a good night offensively, we may not, but we have to establish this is how we're playing every night defensively. And if you can do that, you win some games that maybe you shouldn't on an off night, or a back-to-back without Kawhi or something like that. But if you do that, and again, I believe that personnel-wise, they are better, at least on paper right now. Personnel-wise, they are better defensively than they were a year ago. I think, you take PGA out, who's a very good defender, but you added so much more depth defensively that I think if you get that buy-in from day one and you establish your defense and your defensive principles and how you're going to do this, but also just the mindset. Look, we are defending every night, no matter what. And if you do that, I think you can not only have a really good regular season, but then when you get to the playoffs, there's no switch to turn on or it's all right, guys, now we're going to really dig in defensively. No, we've been doing it the whole season.
You mentioned bringing in Derek Jones Jr. Just what have you observed from him on the opposition and how he can blend in with this Clippers group?
Well, he's so athletic, and he got into the league because of athleticism and his ability to guard, and he's gotten better. I haven't looked yet because I haven't really started much prep, but he's become a serviceable three-point shooter. In playing with Luka Doncic, you have to be that. And so he's your prototypical 3-and-D guy, 6'6", 6'7", could guard multiple positions, but you can't leave him in the playoffs. And that's the whole thing with these guys, Adam. You know this, that if you're that guy and you're a high-level defender and you can guard multiple positions, that's all fine and dandy in the regular season. But when the opposition starts game planning defensively for you and they ain't closing out to you, it's a problem. You're playing 5-on-4 on the offensive end. And I think he's gotten past that. I think he's a good enough shooter now to where you can leave him out there and trust that he's going to be able to not only attempt threes, but make threes, and the other team can't leave him.
Yeah, I'm with you. What he did in the playoffs, helping them get to the finals. I know he had a rough final series, but I think he overall shot something like 37% from three.
Yeah, which is fine. Yeah. You just can't be 31%.
No doubt. Then you get the Russell Westbrook type of treatment. Yeah. Don MacLean is our guest here on Clippers Talk. Don, two guys were extension eligible this summer. One got his extension in Big Zoo. We'll start with him. To me, you tell me what you think about this, but the way I see it is Ivica Zubac is probably the third most important player on this Clippers team, given what he does defensively and maybe what he can do offensively, because I feel like there's some untapped potential there maybe.
Well, the thing I've always admired about Zoo is he's gotten better every year at something. You know, and he's durable and reliable, doesn't miss many games. And so that's got to be really comforting for Ty Lue and his staff that you know that Zoo's coming to play every night. I do agree with you in terms of it. I think he could score more if they needed him to score more. And this is kind of what I was getting at earlier. Like with Harden and Kawhi and no PG now, maybe he does become more of a focal point of the offense. The hard part with straight fives and 7-1 guys, unless you're Jokic, is the ISO post-up game is just so easy to defend.
Tell me about that. Is that part of the zones?
Well, it's part of the zone, but it's also you can just get it out of his hands quickly.
Because you can double without him having the ball now, right?
You can double, but you can also double and get out of that double quickly if he does have the ball. I think the thing we haven't seen enough of to warrant him getting those ISO posts is how is he as a passer? The reason the Denver Nuggets run Jokic down there, they know that you can not double him, you can double him, but he's such a good passer that teams just leave him singled up. And that's the genius of the Joker is that, okay, double me, I'm going to pick you apart with the passing. You don't double me, I'm scoring on the guy guarding me. And so if Zoo can demonstrate that he can not only score against single coverage, but if he can pass out of doubles, yeah, I could see them running him down there and running more stuff through him.
Be interesting to see him get a little bit more touches this season because, I don't know, for a while, I jokingly would call him like the long-lost Gasol brother. That's overpraised and hyperbole. But every once in a while, in that series against Dallas, I think he averaged 16 and 10. He was using the left hand. Like, he opened some eyes a little bit, and I just feel like if they're going to stay in contention, and we could talk about this too in a little bit here of where they're going to end up in the Western Conference, Zubac is going to have to be a big part of that. But Terance Mann has yet to get that extension. We know how versatile he's been over the years and how many positions he's had to play for them. They bring in Derek Jones Jr., which is kind of interesting to me, Dom, because they're almost, similar in the way they play. And Terance Mann has been reluctant at times to take threes. He started off so cold to last season. Then in 2024, he shot 44% finally from the outside and turned a corner. But it feels like, I don't want to say make or break, but maybe his most important season coming up with the Clippers?
Well, here's what I don't know, and because I don't know, because I'm getting too old, Adam. I'm lazy. I don't know, but I don't know all the salary cap rules. Okay, and so there may be a reason why they chose not to extend him, or maybe on the other side, Terance Mann didn't want to get extended for some reason. Terance Mann's gotten expensive, though, Adam. Like, he's not just the guy, the energy. Like, he's a good player, and I don't know what his market is right now. But it ain't 8 million or 10 million. I'll tell you that. And so I don't know, based on where the Clippers are at in their salary cap, what Terance Mann wants and what the Clippers can afford without getting into these taxes and aprons and everything. So it may be a wait and see. And maybe Terance said, you know what, I'm going to bet on myself this year and get to free agency. We don't know all that. All I do know is Terance Mann has become a very good NBA player, and whatever extension or contract he gets, he has earned and deserves.
Yeah, no doubt. I just feel like, man, Terance Mann, do you see this as the starting backcourt with him next to James Harden, and then it's Derrick Jones Jr., Kawhi, Ivica, Zubac. Is that the defensive-oriented starting lineup you could see?
I have to believe it is. And again, Mann and Derrick Jones Jr., super versatile defensively. So you can switch with that. Kawhi versatile defensively. I'd be surprised if that wasn't the starting lineup. But remember when Batum was with the Clippers before, he started a lot of games at that spot. And so I think that's the one job that's probably up for grabs in training camp. But yeah, I think with those five, defensively, especially with Terance Mann and Derrick Jones Jr., you're going to be able to guard a team that has good wings.
What do you think is more taxing for a player? Because we've thrown out a lot of conjecture of whether or not Kawhi should be playing the 3 or the 4 in today's NBA and what actually puts less stress on his right knee. He's been playing the 4 the last year. Obviously, by the end of the year, it wore him down. But in the modern NBA, is there an advantage to playing one position over the other when it comes to taking care of a guy that's been injury prone?
No, I don't think it has anything to do with injury prevention. I think why they choose to put him at the 4 is they want 4s guarding him, and he is so friggin' strong that he can guard any 4 in the league. It doesn't matter, even if he's given up 3, 4, 5 inches. He's so strong that they're not worried about defensively him guarding 4s, but they want 4s on him because he torches those guys off the bounce, get into that mid-range game. But no, I don't think there's any. Playing is playing. I don't think if you play the 3 or the 4, it's any less taxing on your body.
I wonder how many times you ran across a Jeff Van Gundy defense in the NBA and what he can bring to the Clippers now as an assistant coach.
Well, I've always wondered why. I'm sure he did. He had a great TV gig, and he probably liked that. And I've read that he wanted to be around his family and all that stuff. But I always didn't understand why he hadn't gotten back into coaching, because he really knows what he's doing. He really knows what he's talking about. I think more than anything, Adam, just having him there as a new voice and with his stature, I think he'll get a lot more buy-in defensively. Not to say that the last people that were doing it aren't getting the buy-in, but I just think his stature in the game and his voice carries that. I think all the things we talked about defensively are pointing towards the Clippers being a good defensive team this year for sure.
What do you appreciate most about Coach Lue and his style of doing things after getting the extension this last summer, where he's going to be around next 7 years? He's a longtime Clippers coach now.
Well, I just think his demeanor and his approach to it, not getting too high, too low. You can tell he's a former player, because that's one thing you learn coming from college to the NBA as a player. Is in college, every game's like life or death because you only play 30 of them. When you get to the league, you find out really quick that you cannot get too high or low for 82, or you're just going to burn yourself out. And I think his demeanor kind of transcends to the team to where they don't seem to get too high or too low. And I'm disappointed for him in the sense that with this Clipper team, he won a championship in Cleveland. He hasn't really gotten the opportunity to coach in the playoffs to win a championship because of injury. And that's disappointing, because I think as much as everyone thinks that Ty Lue is a coach, I think there's been a missed opportunity because of injury to really appreciate him as a coach with a unit that's healthy that could make a run to an NBA title.
I brought up Russell Westbrook a little bit earlier. What do you think they're going to miss without Russ, who I did feel like was kind of a regular season innings eater? He struggled mightily in that playoff series.
Yeah.
And how do they just make up for not having the easiest option of a backup point guard that's a more traditional point guard like Russ was?
Yeah, I think they'll miss his energy. I think a lot of nights, I don't know if you agree with this, but from what I saw, I think a lot of nights he kind of started them emotionally and with the energy. I think they'll miss that for sure. I appreciated Russell Westbrook on the Clippers. Look, he could have came in and been a lot of different things because of what happened with the Lakers. And he was selfless. And we all remember that he went to Ty Lue and said, I'll come off the bench. And it turned out to be the best move for the Clippers when Harden came. And so I appreciate all that he hasn't quit on his career after the Laker thing. But I do think some of his offensive struggles, were a thing, especially in the playoffs. And I'm not sure what that means without him there. But overall, I appreciated what Westbrook brought to the table when he came to the Clippers.
When we talk about guys making up for the scoring loss of not having Paul George anymore, how much does Norman Powell factor into that equation for you?
Well, like we just talked about, I think he'll still come off the bench, which I believe is the best role for him. I think Norman Powell in that six-man role is perfect for him. He gets more shots. He doesn't have to play with all the starters most of the time. He gets more opportunity. But, yeah, I think his role becomes even more important without PG. And we'll see. All this stuff, Adam, is so hard. And, you've been around this long enough now. It's so hard until you see it to really understand, what it's going to look like. But I think just on paper, and you and I sitting here talking off the top of our heads, it makes sense without PG that Norman Powell will probably get more opportunity and probably average more points next year.
I don't know how much summer league ball you ended up watching or if you worked with any of these guys, but I want to ask you first about Cam Christie, what you know about him and just his shooting ability, because Don, to a guy that never played high level basketball, to me, his shot is a thing of beauty, the high arc, the elevation he gets on it. And I feel like, I always liked his brother with the Lakers. Thought he probably should have played more last season.
Yeah.
What do you think about Cam Christie in the draft?
Well, I think, on second round picks, it's hard, because it's, you're taking a guy. And why are you taking him? Are you taking him because you think he can help you now? Or are you taking him because in 2 or 3 years you think he can help you? Christie strikes me as that guy. He only played 1 year at Minnesota, came out after his freshman year. But the brother being in the league, I'm sure, influenced him coming out earlier. But we'll see. Look, I didn't think, and this is a credit to him, when Terance Mann first came into, and he was a second round pick too, I never thought he would get this good. I didn't. Just because he wasn't a good shooter. He was just an energy, defense, toughness guy. And give him credit. He has really worked on that shot and become a good offensive player. And I think it's the opposite with Christie. I think skill-wise, he's probably an NBA player, but can he prove that he can guard, that he can be physical, that he can do all the things that will get him on the court? So I hope he gets an opportunity. I don't know if he will early, but he's just got to continue to work and hope that at some point he does get that opportunity.
The Clippers have two guys that are turning 25 this season and are just in their second NBA year. Jordan Miller lit the Summer League on fire, Don. I thought he should have been the Summer League MVP, and he was great in the G League last season too, so it's not like it came out of nowhere completely, at least. Can he find his way into the rotation somehow?
Well, you always got to stay ready, and unfortunately, injuries happen, as we've seen, and so you never know. You may start the year and you're not in the rotation, but then all of a sudden, because of whatever, you got to play. So everyone always tells you that when you're a veteran, you tell young guys you got to stay ready, and it inevitably always happens. It always happens that you do get an opportunity because of some reason. what's good news for Jordan Miller, and this is across the board, and I work with these guys all the time. It doesn't really matter how you play in summer league after you get drafted that first summer. What does matter is if you were in the NBA that following year or a G League team most of the year, you really need to play well heading into your second year, because it's very telling on whether you're going to make it or not. So meaning like a Jordan Miller, I don't remember all the guys that were on the Clippers Summer League team, but if you're a guy that comes in with all these rookies that have never played in the NBA, you have to do well. And that's kind of the barometer for a lot of these players. Like if you do well heading into your second year in Summer League, there's a good chance you're going to stick in the NBA.
Kobe Brown's the other one I mentioned of guys turning 25 in just their second season this year with the Clippers. He got about a 10-game look last season early on. I thought he progressed as it went along. Obviously, they stuck with the veterans. They're a team trying to win a championship, and he found his way out of the rotation. But he does play a position of need at the 4. Is he somebody that you expect to see get a bigger look this season?
Well, again, I think he's in that same mode. I mean, they added guys that did, like Batum's a 3-4. Derrick Jones can play some 4. They just have so many veteran guys that I think it's going to be hard to crack the every night rotation. But just like last year, he's going to get another opportunity. He's a unique player. I like him. He's a good enough shooter, but he does so many different things. He can handle it. He's a big body, he rebounds. And so I think he's on track to be an NBA player, a long-term NBA player. But it's just so hard, Adam, when you go to a team that is contending mode, which the Clippers have been for a long time. And so you just got to stay ready and keep evolving as a player, and hopefully you get your opportunity.
Yeah, it feels like with this second apron, it's more important than ever to try to find a way to develop young talent while you're still trying to win. It's a hard balance. The Denver Nuggets have done it so far. Don, I mentioned it earlier, but your expectations for this Clippers team this season. I've heard a lot of people say, well, their peak is probably a 6 seed, and they'll be fighting all year to try to stay out of the play-in. Is that how you see it?
Well, I think it was an ESPN thing a couple of weeks ago where somebody or their panel, or I forget who it was, but they kind of ranked the Western Conference teams, and they had the Clippers 12th in the West. And that really surprised me. I know they lost PG, and maybe that's that they don't trust that Kawhi is going to play enough for them to finish that high. But I look at this team, and I don't think there's any way, and I'm saying minimum, at the very minimum, that they're not at least a play-in team. At least. And if things go well and they gel and they become this defensive team that I think that they can become, then I think they're not a play-in team. Now, look, I don't think they're going to be the 1 seed in the West or anything, but to say that they're not even going to be a play-in team to me is ludicrous, and that they're going to fall, like you said, somewhere 4, 5, 6 play-in. That's kind of where I see them for now. And who knows, man? No one knows. They could really come together, and that locker room becomes really cohesive, and all of a sudden they're way better than people think.
Last one for you here, D-Mac. But how was this Clippers organization viewed when you were playing versus where it's at today as they're about to get into a new arena?
It's not even close. It's a full 360 or 180 or whatever that is. Like it is night and day. And I'll even go back. This is probably before you were even doing Clippers. The Clippers, when Ballmer took over versus right before he took over, everything starts at the top, Adam. In any business, any walk of life, it all starts at the top. And the minute Steve Ballmer bought this Clipper team was the minute everything changed and everything became different for the good.
He is the great Don MacLean. We're lucky to have him as our Clipper analyst on Bally Sports. D-Mac, thanks for doing this, always being a good friend and a good guiding voice when it comes to basketball opinions. I've been looking at you. Petro's Money, I think, started in 2007, and you were their BFF pretty early on. I remember D-Mac being one of the first people after the Heatles came together to say, I like Chris Bosh, but they probably need just more of a finisher like Amari Stoudemire. I don't think they're going to win in their first year. It's going to take more time. Sure enough, the Miami Heat lost in the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
Your wisdom has been here from the beginning, and it's been great to learn from you.
Yeah, I've been doing this a long time, Adam. I still enjoy doing it. I do. I think I've always appreciated the people I meet in this business and working with different people. You're one of them, and we'll see. I am more optimistic than most, I think, this year about the Clippers, and hopefully we have a good season.
We'll see you at the Intuit Dome, my friend. For Don MacLean, I'm Adam Osland. This has been another edition of Clippers Talk. Talk to you guys later.